Hey guys, I'm Tom the Tech Chap, and this is the brand spanking new Dell XPS 15 9520. You can't tell from the outside, well, except for this sticker here, but this is the new 2022 model. And it is a terrific laptop. A lot of people buy these, I have for many years, and a lot of reviewers still think this is the best 15-inch laptop you can buy, and for good reason. Dell have been evolving the XPS and the 15 for the past 12 years now, and all the ones I've tested over the last 4, 5, 6 years have been pretty great. And the good news, I suppose, is that it's business as usual. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, which Dell certainly did not. And actually, well, no, that's not good news, because in some ways it is a bit broken. This thing gets too hot and too loud, and as beautiful and, well, still impressive as it is, it's struggling to stand out now compared to the likes of the Asus ZenBook Pro 16X OLED, and of course, this, the MacBook Pro 16. If you are a regular on the channel, you know that I've been using the XPS 15s as my main work and editing laptops for quite a few years now, until I switched to this late last year when it came out. This is the 16 with the M1 Max. It is an absolute beast, and actually one of the reasons I did switch to this, not just because I do quite like the Apple ecosystem, I use AirDrop all the time, but the media engine in this. There are no other laptops out there outside of MacBooks, particularly the higher spec ones, where I can seamlessly scrub through Premiere Pro, my timeline, with no lag or stutter. The advantage of this is that we have that CUDA GPU acceleration, but in my everyday life, I use this all the time, and there is just really no Windows equivalent to it yet, unfortunately. This is going off topic a little bit, but the seamless integration that Apple have right now with their hardware and their software, every Windows laptop, well, it feels like they have to make them with one arm tied behind their back, because they have to work with Intel or AMD, and then NVIDIA or AMD on the GPU side, and then they have to put it into their own chassis. Optimization and efficiency is wasted, but even though I've switched to this, MacBooks aren't for everyone. They are very expensive, although so is this when you spec it up a little bit. But a lot of people still prefer Windows. They have to use Windows for work. And if you're gaming, you're going to get better frame rates and, well, about 1 million times more games you can actually play on this. And one thing you don't get with an Apple laptop right now is the option for an OLED screen. The Pros do have mini LED, so it comes close, and it also gets brighter, which is actually quite a significant advantage. But this is OLED, so you get those rich, deep, inky blacks. Now, if this does look familiar, then it's because, well, it's because it is. We've had the same design for a couple of years now, save for the addition of that OLED screen, which came in last year. So what is actually new here? Well, a couple of things, and that's about it, to be honest. We've got the new 12th gen Intel processors, either the i5, i7, i9, and actually they are a bit of an upgrade. It'll come to performance in a second. We also have faster DDR5 RAM, and also slightly improved battery life. And that is about it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Jam. Okay, we should probably talk a little bit more about this. This is a fairly minor refresh, and in fact, we even have the same GPUs. We get the RTX 3050 and the 3050 Ti options. Still no AMD, still no 3060, which is exclusive to the 17-inch. There's also still no Wi-Fi 6E, which is a bit bizarre, and also still no high refresh rate, which is a bit frustrating. But hold your horses, this is still an upgrade, and it is still a stunning laptop. So right now, the XPS lineup includes the 13, the 13 Plus, the 15 and the 17, and the main difference coming up from the 13s is that we get a dedicated GPU in here, as well as more ports, a bigger battery, and, well, a bigger screen. However, the 15 does lack the better vapor chamber cooling that we get on the 17, plus, as I say, the GPU tops out at the 3050 Ti rather than the 3060. And actually, the 3050 Ti I have in here has been downclocked significantly compared to last year. But the trade-off is the 15 is a good deal lighter and more portable, so I still think this is the sweet spot in the XPS range. This video is sponsored by my favorite VPN, Surfshark. I have it on my desktop, in Chrome, on my phone. You can get it on nearly everything, and actually one account can be used with an unlimited number of devices. So there's obviously loads of VPNs out there, but Surfshark is such a simple and lightweight app, you really don't mind having it running. They also have an impressive 4.3 Trustpilot rating, and it's just really easy to use. You can pick from thousands of servers around the world, and then access websites and content region-free and privately. Plus, their exclusive Clean Web tool helps keep you safe online, so whether you're at home or you're traveling and you need to access your email, your bank, or your shopping, it helps prevent tracking, malware, and ads. But the best bit is not only do you get 83% off and also 3 months extra for free if you use the code TechChap at the checkout, but Surfshark are also giving away their antivirus for free until the end of June. So click the link in the description below and get started with Surfshark. And if you're not super duper satisfied, then they also have a 30-day money-back guarantee. I think by now we're all pretty familiar with the aluminium chassis and this carbon fiber palm rest. It still looks good, although I do prefer the Arctic silvery white option that you get in the US, but actually right now for some reason is not available in the UK. It could be a stock issue. And with these super thin bezels and this huge touchpad, it is a very smart looking laptop. Although the downside still is that the palm rest and the keys can get a bit grubby and fingerprinty. And also watch out for the shiny aluminium edges of this because it scratches quite easily, and then because it is a bit glossy, you do notice it. Where did I put there it is. Okay, here we go. This is the XPS 13 Plus. I am working on my review of this at the same time, so make sure you have hit that subscribe button as I'll have a video of this coming very soon. But you can see we've got it in the Arctic white color. So actually if I put it side by side with the traditional, this is gonna be tricky, black carbon fiber color, which do you prefer? I think the white looks a lot snazzier. Perhaps not quite as subtle if you're going to take it into a meeting, but it looks a lot more futuristic. In fact, the whole 13 Plus looks more futuristic, and that is kind of one of my issues. As I say, there really is no design refresh or change. To be fair, not everyone is going to love that keyboard layout. The keycaps are much bigger, but there's no room, there's no gap between them, so it's kind of hard to feel your way around. It takes a little bit of time to get used to. And also we have this capacitive function row at the top. So in my mind, this feels like the next generation of Dell's designs and sort of laptops, whereas this feels a bit last gen. So possibly next year we'll see this kind of design moving on to the 15 and the 17s, which would be quite interesting to see. But it would also mean this is kind of like the last generation of the current design. And it's one of my conclusions at the end, but I'll just tell you right now, I think last year's XPS 15 is still going to be a better buy. You can get a similar high-end spec for about 700-800 quid less, assuming you can find one, than this. And while this is better, and I'll show you how and why in a second, it's not that much better. So I still think last year's model might be the better option, or indeed wait a year and let's see what the new 15 and 17s, or maybe the 15 Plus and 17 Pluses could be like. Build quality is top notch though. The whole thing just feels nice to hold, and it is impressively slim given the power on offer here. So how much is it? Well, as always, it comes down to where you live and of course the spec that you go for. In the UK, the 15 starts at £1,549, which is actually 50 quid less than the equivalent model from last year. Although right now there is a sale on which gets you 150 off. In the US, the base spec starts at $1,449. However, once you start going for the higher specs, it gets a bit pricey. My near enough maxed out model here with an i9 and a 3050 Ti, 64 gigs of the new DDR5 RAM, along with the OLED screen and a 1TB SSD, we're looking at £3,049. And you can add a couple hundred more if you want a 2TB SSD. Personally, I would go with the i7. I really don't think I could justify paying 400 quid more for the i9. That is quite frankly ridiculous. And if you do want the GPU, then the extra £50 or $100 for the Ti is definitely worth it. And I would also go with 16 gigs of RAM, 1TB of storage, and personally I would go with the OLED screen. So altogether my recommended model will cost you about $2,400 or £2,200. This is actually not bad value for money considering it's an ultra premium kind of workstation replacement laptop, and it is certainly cheaper than the MacBook Pro 16, although that's not an exact like-for-like comparison. If we pop off the base, you can see there are 2 RAM modules along with the PCIe 4 SSD, both of which you can upgrade yourself, so it might be more cost effective to buy a lower spec now and maybe upgrade these further down the line. Another carryover from last year are these fantastic speakers. We have dual woofers and dual tweeters, which make up an 8-watt system, and it gives us one of the best sounding laptops you can buy, again perhaps except for that pesky MacBook Pro.
That was utterly terrifying, and I regret having joined you.
We also get the same lovely keyboard, which is actually still one of my favorites on a Windows laptop, with well-spaced keys and plenty of feedback. And that's alongside this massive precision touchpad, which is just as lovely to use as ever, although we don't get the haptic feedback that we get on the new 13 Plus or the MacBook. But let's talk about this screen, because it is still one of the standout features, and there really are only a handful of options out there if you do want an OLED display. As I say, I think the best ones, or the best competing ones, are from ASUS with their ZenBook lineup. Now this is a 16:10, so you can see here with my video. Going back to a regular 16:9 now just feels old-fashioned. Actually, it's one of my biggest criticisms of the Galaxy Book 2 Pro, which I'm also reviewing at the moment. And it is a gorgeous screen, but still 60 Hz, sadly, unlike ASUS ZenBooks, which are OLED and 90 Hz. It does make this feel a bit slower. That performance just doesn't feel like it's there on tap because we're still limited to 60 Hz. And also, it's not the brightest. This OLED model tops out at 400 nits, and also it's 3.5K rather than a native 4K resolution. The other two LED LCD options, so the non-OLED versions, are actually 500 nits, so a little bit brighter, and also that 4K plus option will give you that full native 4K res. Things do get brighter with HDR content though. I measured a peak brightness of around 800 nits. So I think I would trade the 4K Plus's extra pixels and also the extra nits in HDR for that infinite contrast and the punchier colors that you get with OLED. It is a touchscreen though, which is nice and maybe helpful for you if you're doing some digital drawing or note-taking or e-signatures, that kind of thing. But this OLED option, like the 4K option, they're both £200, $250 upgrades over the standard Full HD Plus. So this does cost more. And the other benefit of sticking with Full HD is that the battery life will last you about 50% longer. Going to this 3.5 or the 4K options does have quite a big impact on your battery. However, the downside of sticking with the cheaper Full HD option is that you don't get this sort of edge-to-edge glass bezel. You have a little bit of sort of a plastic protruding bezel. Doesn't look as nice. It's also not as color accurate, and it's matte, which you may prefer, but if you're looking at content and watching movies and editing videos and photos and things, the glossy screen is nice to have, particularly paired with that OLED panel. Color accuracy is top notch though. We're looking at 100% sRGB and Adobe RGB and high P3 coverage. Let's talk about battery life though, because it does depend on whether you go for the 56 or the bigger 86 watt-hour battery, and of course also what specs and what screen you go for. Now here, with the larger battery and the OLED screen, my XPS 15 managed 7.5 hours in my standard full screen video test, which to my surprise is a nice little jump from the 6 hours that I got on last year's model, so battery life is about 15 to 20% better this year. And so with mixed use, I reckon you could easily manage about 7 hours out of this, less in more demanding tasks and probably an hour and a half of gaming, but it is still a definite improvement. Although if you want the absolute best battery, then you're going to want to stick with the Full HD screen, but also go with a bigger battery. They'll probably get you closer to 12 hours. So far, we've barely even talked about the actual main upgrade this year, the CPU. So let's see how fast this is. And in my benchmarks, we can see that while the single-core speeds are slightly better than last year, there is a definite step up in multi-core results. Nothing major, but alongside the slightly longer battery, it's a definite win. And as you would expect, it's plenty fast enough for some demanding 4K editing in Premiere Pro and batch photo editing in Lightroom. It's pretty much workstation level, which again is very impressive given just how slim this is. Okay, moving on to the GPU, in this case the 3050 Ti, and it's worth saying that this is a 45 watt GPU rather than the 75 watt versions that you may find in some of the laptops. And coupled with only 4 gigs of VRAM, and of course that fairly major downclock versus the 3050 Ti in last year's XPS 15, means that while gaming potential is there, it's nothing special. So I must admit, it was kind of a surprise that at 1200p, the new CPU actually offsets the slower GPU, making big gains in Rainbow Six Siege, with a more modest improvement in Fortnite. But annoyingly, that underclock wipes out any more meaningful gains. But next to the XPS 17 with its 3060, the 15 here very much comes in second place. And not just in terms of frame rates, the cooling is also much better on the 17 to match its components. And so while otherwise this is a very well-rounded and very polished laptop, I think my one criticism really, aside from perhaps not being the most interesting this year, is the fans and the cooling. It gets hot and it gets loud. In fact, if we take another look inside, you can see the 17's vapor chamber cooler is significantly bigger than the 15's. The fans on this seem to come in even under minimal loads, and it can get pretty loud. And actually, in my stress test using the optimized and also the high performance modes, the CPU jumps up as high as 75 to 95 watts and also hits 100 degrees Celsius at the initial load, before then gradually throttling back over the next minute or so. Then both this and the clock speeds these just drop off a cliff. The only advantage of this quite serious throttling is that the fans quieten down. But this does mean that sustained performance is severely curbed after only a minute or so, which isn't the case with the 17, and the difference is even more stark when you compare it to, say, the MacBook Pro 14 or 16, which just never really gets flustered and stays almost silent the whole time, even under load. Look at that. That's terrible. I appreciate how thin the bezels are, and we have face unlocking, and it's actually now separate, the IR camera and the main selfie camera here for the webcam. Selfie, webcam, but the quality is terrible. Look at that, it's so noisy, and this is actually some decent lighting if I go right up to the window. Yeah, not good at all. Come on, Dell, you can do better. But I wouldn't say any of those are deal breakers. I wish this had 90 Hz. I wish they had done a bit of a design update, even not just from an aesthetic point of view, but to give it a bit better cooling so we get better sustained performance. It's still incredibly powerful, but I just would like it to be a bit less throttly. And also, when you do see the likes of the ZenBook Pro 16X OLED, I think that's the right name, with its little dial built in and its 90 Hz OLED screen, just little bits of innovation, and of course what we're seeing with the MacBooks as well. While this is still a great laptop, and if you can get it on a sale, definitely worth considering, it just feels a little bit boring this year. And actually, going back to what I said at the beginning, if you can find a good deal on last year's model, while you will lose out on the slightly faster CPU and the slightly longer battery life, aside from that, it's not really a big deal, and you could save a whole bunch of money. So this is still fine, especially if you're upgrading from a 3-4 year or older laptop, but certainly not worth it if you've got one for the last couple of years, and I still think last year's model is probably a better option overall. But what do you think? Are you an XPS 15 owner? Let me know what you make of it in the comments below, and also if you've got any questions about this at all. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy the video and want to see my review of the XPS 13 Plus and also the MacBook Air M2, which is coming very soon, make sure you have hit that subscribe button, ding that bell, all those annoying YouTuber things, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat. Oh, and don't forget to click the link below and check out Surfshark VPN. Using my code TechChap, you can get 83% off and 3 months for free, and until the end of June, they're giving away their antivirus for free.